what is order here and what is centering here is, emotion, it's family, it's, trying to grapple with loss, trying to grapple with things you cannot have. This is a Marvel movie actually about something. All of these Guardians of the Galaxy movies have been. And in this one in particular, it turned me into a blubbering mess at the end. And Marvel movies don't make me cry. They make my eyes roll. But like the moist meter of my eyes was to like such an extent this go around that, by the end I like had to just, find a quiet place and be alone. Because
may thy knife chip and shatter.
Welcome to Theater and Stream, a film podcast. I am Matt, and that is Chuck, and this is episode number 7. The summer blockbuster season is here, and with it, James Gunn's final installment in the Guardians of the Galaxy series. After a string of misses, is it a return to form for the MCU? Or is it just another rocky outcrop that's going to hit them on the way down? We'll discuss that and more in our featured review. Along with a couple of smaller stories, in the news this week, it's led by quite possibly the most important story that we'll talk about all year, the Writers Guild of America strike. We'll go over what the writers are asking for, what happened the last time there was a writers' strike, and what this all means for us as the audience. And finally, rounding out the show, we'll talk about what we've been watching in the Watchlist, what else we've been doing this week in the Mentionable, and our favorite show or movie and pick of the week. Timestamps are in the episode description. Like and subscribe if you like what you see. Rate us on your podcast service if you like what you hear. That's the business end of the show. And I guess before we get into the serious business stuff, we got a little bit of a palate cleanser here, don't we?
We certainly do. Because I totally got faked out when we were talking about, I think it was CinemaCon, like a week or so ago, because I got totally fooled by a very, very clever editor who made a convincing Dune Part 2 trailer. And I watched it and I was like, wow, that legitimately, everything that is in this, down to the music cues and the voiceover shot that they put in it, I bit that so hard and believed it. That I was like, wow, they got a trailer out. That looks really cool. I don't know how they did it. It might have been AI generated for all I know, because the genuine article was so much better. Oh my God, this movie, the imagery that they have put into this was for the fans. They know that the normies really didn't check Dune out and really didn't get it, if you know what I mean. Film snobs were there. They were there for Denis Villeneuve, but oh my God, this is everything I've ever fucking wanted. The 5-year-old boy who heard my dad read the chapter, that begins with the Gom Jabbar and all that shit, awoke seeing Paul Atreides on that fucking sandworm saying, may your knife chip and shatter. I was just like, yes, this is all I've ever fucking wanted from my entire life. So yeah, obviously I'm hyped. But what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm kind of coming from the layman perspective here. We've talked about it before. I have not read the book, and so all I really have to go on is the look. And, I'm looking at these, how some of this stuff is shot, and it looks incredible. It almost looks as if these in this second half of the book and the second movie, do we go to the Harkonnen like homeworld? Does that happen?
We fucking do. Yes.
Okay. Because I'm seeing these scenes that are almost look like they're shot in like black and white with sort of bluish hues to everything, and I'm thinking like, okay, we're clearly going to like their homeworld or something, and so that's what has me excited.
It's a neat little like tertiary part of the story. It's where Bene Gesserit, who's being played by what's her name? Is it Leah Seydoux?
Leah Seydoux.
Yeah. She's the Countess Fenring, who's a Bene Gesserit, just like Jessica, and she's being sent there to basically, get impregnated by Feyd-Rautha, played by Elvis. And that's what I thought too. I was like, wait, is that in black and white? What the fuck are they doing? And then I realized, oh, it's because it's Gady Prime. Because like they've actually thought it out, and they for some reason have decided that because of the sun that Gady Prime is orbiting, that's why they're all bald and albino looking. It's because they're getting irradiated. Like they are like a mutated, fetid, like offshoot of the human species at this point because of the planet they live on. And that sequence that we're kind of seeing is this gladiatorial fight that Feyd-Rautha is participating in, because he just does it for fun, and he's taking on an Atreides slave, a survivor of an Atreides soldier who is like ready to fucking get his revenge for the death of his duke. It's an awesome sequence. So look forward to that. It's going to be cool.
Yeah, it looks awesome. And I mean, it's early enough that I think we'll probably get another trailer, at least one more before the film is released. And, give me some shots of Christopher Walken. Give me some,
Who is Tim
give me some,
Nelson even playing? We don't know. Like we suspect, but
I've heard, I don't know it hasn't been announced officially, but I heard that he's playing Leah Seydoux's, is it husband?
Yeah, the Count.
Is that,
he's the mentat for the Emperor. So when we see the Emperor on screen, he's gonna have Tim Blake Nelson next to him in some ridiculous, Dune getup. It's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be almost as good as having the Emperor being played by Salvador Dali, but not quite. But this is what we're getting. And speaking of what we're getting, this was a last minute addition. At the 11th hour, you were just like, have you done the graphics yet? We need to talk about this. And initially, all I was taken to was this blank ass splash page that just said after has never been so, before has never been so jealous of after.
Oh yeah, so stupid. Such a dumb tagline.
And eventually what is unearthed is that this is something called Teevee, which is coming to us from Pluto.tv founder Ilya Zikuevich, or whatever the fuck his name is. But this is dystopian as fuck. But why don't you explain to our audience what exactly TV or telly is going to be, and what they should consider before signing up for it?
Yeah, so what this is, and people who are watching, you can go to Teevee.com right now and you can see this tease, and I think it actually somebody published the website a little too early, and that's kind of what kicked off all this stuff. But basically, this is a television with a persistent second screen, and we don't quite know what that means, whether that's literally another screen on top, like a physical screen, or if it's just like a picture-in-picture type thing, if you've ever done that on your 4K TV where you watch two things at once. It might be that, just a little 7x3-inch thing in the corner of your screen that shows advertisements the entire time that your TV is on. Consistently, you can't get rid of it. You may be able to cover it up. We don't know about, whether or not you could do that yet. And the idea behind this, I think, again, they haven't said, but the idea would be that they would sell you this TV for either nothing or maybe even pay you to have it in your home.
Yeah.
And they would just show you ads constantly while you're watching your other programming.
And the other question, is it on even when your TV is off?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I don't know. it's pretty dystopian, and it's pretty, you know, you got to think about what kind of privacy destroying tech is in this thing.
Well,
like,
yeah.
and
thing I
you know,
thought of was the Kinect. Do you remember that little piece of
Yeah.
gadgetry? One of the selling points of that, like, which was, if you don't remember, it was motion control for Xbox 360, era from Microsoft. And part of the selling point of it was, they could tell how many people were in a room watching something, so they could hike your rate if you were having a bunch of people over to watch the Super Bowl or something like that. Like, that's where it really gets fucked up, because like, why can't I just cover this thing up and act like it's not even there?
Well, my guess, if I had to, you know, hypothesize about this, is that we see a lot of VR headsets nowadays that have eye tracking tech in them. I think the Quest, the Meta Quest 2 has that. I believe that the newest Steam headset has that. So my guess is this TV is going to have some sort of eye tracking software in it that, you know, needs to be able to see your eyes while you're watching it, to know that you're looking at the screen. And if you're not, then it'll pause what you're watching, or it'll like mute it. It'll do something. It's like a Tesla. Teslas have this too, where if the Tesla detects that you're looking down at your phone texting, it'll blare a noise and say, "Hey, look up at the road, dumbass." And so I'm assuming that's what this is gonna have.
And then we're, you know, just a few, you know, meters adjacent from the slippery slope that leads to that Black Mirror episode, 15 Million Merits, if you remember that one, where like, oh no, you have to watch the porn ad or we're gonna like blast this sound at you, you know, over and over and over again until you look at it. You know, like that's where this is going. Ultimately, it's gonna be, you're gonna not own the thing you have, you know, like, which is, you know, something that we've lamented on before. Like Louis Rossman just, you know, made a video about it was like a VR headset for drone pilots, you know, people who do professional racing in that. So this company, you know, didn't buy a firmware update, you know, code, you know, that they had from an employee. It was licensed to them by the employee, and they stopped paying for the license. So he pulls their access, you know, to that thing from, you know, whatever the database is. So now all of their headsets are bricked, because the people who sell it to you don't maintain everything that is necessary to, you know, actually make it functional. So now they have like a $5,000 piece of, you know, what's the word? Paper, like a paperweight. That's what it is. You know, not that it
I mean,
paper.
The big question with this is who would choose to have this in their home, especially if, you know, if you're being paid to do this. I mean, I guess it depends on how much, but I guess there's a little bit of an argument there. But if this is free, or even if it's like, you know, $50 or something like that, there's no reason to have this, because you can find, you know, bottom of the barrel TVs nowadays, you know, like, you know, the certain brands like Hisense or like Daewoo, or, you know, even like some of the more respectable brands like Vizio. They, you know, around Black Friday, around the Super Bowl, 2 times a year, look for the TV sales, and you can find a 40-inch, you know, 4K TV for $200. And it's like, why would you choose? Yeah. It's like, why would you choose to do this if that's, you know, that is an option out there, which it is. And so I don't understand the idea behind this. And if I have a use case for this, what I think these should be used for, and we should take these TVs and put them in maximum security prisons to monetize the prison population.
Oh shit, bro. No, see, no, you're just making 15 million merits more normal. You know, like, you know, because the prison belongs to all of us, because all of society is within the little box with the screen. Oh my God. But I think you're right. Yeah, like, you know, test it out on the servile population, because that's essentially what our prison population is. They are the guinea pigs. They are the slave labor, you know, for manufacturing and textiles and things like that. So yeah, why not? Why aren't we using the brain activity of prisoners to like make machine learning better. You know what I mean? Like why aren't prisoners being the ones talking to the chatbots? Why does it have to be us? Like, I guess maybe that answer, that's a better, maybe, I think, because then they'll be a lot like the people in the prison. So I don't know. But as far as this product goes, it's coming to us from probably the smartest man in the room when it came to monetizing something old just in a new way, because he just took linear TV and had a very successful story within that industry. I had emailed you about the people who did dark matter TV and like DIY TV. They're still sending me emails to my work email, even though I've been hey, I can't write about you guys because you have nothing to do with this little pocket of the world that I live in, but come to our talk to us on our podcast, like because we're so important. And of course they don't email me there, but like they're another group of people, and they make movies. Actually, they are making their own content for their linear distribution platforms, which is not something that this guy is talking about doing here. So if there's not even content that is native to that box, why am I getting it? Like at least if you buy like an Apple TV, there's the implication that, oh, I'll get a package of Apple TV associated with this, and that's a good deal. So like, like if you're not going to even bother making a product for this, piece of IP, then like, what is the point? I don't know. There has to be more vision there, and I don't think that they really have it. I think he's just throwing his money away on whatever the fuck this is going to be, because I'm just not buying it right now.
Same. We'll find out later this year,
I suppose. Because making your own content is fucking hard, as we all know, and it's especially hard when you don't have those dirty poor people in tattered clothing with the pens and the keyboards and the laptops toiling away in those mines that they call writers' rooms, because they are on strike right now, and this is something we haven't seen since 2007. So like what is causing this, and what is precipitating, not only precipitating it, but ultimately probably going to drive it to its inevitable conclusion? But like, why is this happening?
Yeah, so after about 6 weeks of talks, the WGA decided to go on strike. And this is about 20,000 people that work in the television and film industry. And what they want it boils down to, they want Hollywood to swear off using AI to write scripts or to punch up scripts. They want better pay and better residuals. And then they also want a guaranteed number of writers on television shows based on how many episodes that show is. Essentially, the more episodes a season of TV is, the more writers get, tacked on to the show.
Okay.
And that's kind of what it boils down to. Those are the three, main points. There's a couple smaller things, but those are the big ones.
Okay. That's interesting, because that ultimately kind of sets what the budget of a TV show can be. When you get down to it, because the writers are going to eat up so much of a percentage of it, more than they used to. And like what kind of how I don't know, but hey, buddy boy.
Well, I mean, I think that
you take it away for a second.
It's funny because I think you flashed it up on the screen a bit, but the WGA has been very, very transparent with their dealings with it's called the AMPTP, is the organization of producers that they're sort of rallying against, and they've been very transparent about their dealings with them. And it's pretty funny to look at their minutes from their meetings, and what you see on almost every single thing is, this is what we asked for as the WGA, and then over in the AMPTP category, it says, rejected our offer, did not propose a counter. And it's just on half of the things they asked for. And the AMPTP is using almost like these Amazon-like or Starbucks-like union-busting tactics, like just flat out ignoring and refusing to talk about certain things, or threatening people's jobs. Now they just yesterday, actually, a bunch of the companies involved with this, including Disney and Paramount, sent out like mass emails to all of their writers, basically saying like, yeah, you can't write, but you better be on set to do all this other stuff. We're gonna put you to work still. We can't make you write, but we can make you go get the director's coffee, or we can make you go get. And it's nuts, because they're like
degrading as fuck.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. I just added it to our doc yesterday, and it's basically like they're basically saying, if you don't come in and do this, these menial jobs, then we're gonna fire you, and then we don't give a fuck if you're on strike because you've already been fired. And so it's pretty crazy.
It's pretty despicable too, when you get down to it, when you think about how much fucking money is being spent on all the content that these people are writing on, and just how little work there ultimately is when you get down to it. Because there's only so many writers who can be in a room. There's only so much credit they can even get for the work that they do. There's already so many gates and gatekeeps and arbitrary ceilings put on the various stages of how you make money in this line of work. And you have people like that dude on The Bear, who's making so little money that he's negative while he's at an awards show that he wins an award at for the show he works on. And he's been pretty vocal in there. What did you think of Adam Conover? I know he's kind of a little douchey boy. I'll just call him that. I don't really like his content, but it took some fucking cojones to go on David Zaslav's news network and basically call him out for how much money that man gets paid. $250 million a year. And maybe he deserves it because he saved Warner Brothers Discovery so much fucking money. But yeah, I don't know. Not a good look when you consider how what that would mean for the 10,000 writers in the guild. That's only $20,000 a piece, and that's all going to one dude. I don't know. It was I'm not a leftist by any means, but that was an interesting classist perspective when you look at the industry from the working man writer, like the guy on The Bear, and David Zaslav, who lords over the marketplace that the network that broadcasts the show belongs to.
His comments are interesting, and it's funny how there have been kind of like these sort of figureheads that have emerged from this strike, like him and Rob Lowe was out there like picketing with them, and Rob Lowe was like doing all these like TikToks and Instagram stories, and he was getting out there. And there's this woman, I wish I could remember her name, but she's a writer from Cartoon Network, and she just flat out came out and said, like, I don't think you people realize how dire this is. And she basically laid out how like shitty things are right now within, in the internal Cartoon Network, and how like that network is on the verge of just being completely like done. Wow. Like completely, like Zaslav is ready to just hit the red button and just nuke it from the earth. And so all these sort of figureheads have emerged, and that's sort of interesting. It's pretty crazy. And I would encourage anybody to just go and look at what the WGA is saying on their various social media accounts, because as we sort of transition here to talking about what happened the last time this went on. The last time there was a 100-day strike. That's how long it lasted in 2007, and a lot of people will remember that. And so when it's important to look back and remember what happened and what could possibly happen now. And so what do you remember about that, the 2007 writers' strike?
The show I associate most with the consequences of that strike is Heroes. The first season of that show was transcendent. It was as hot as like Lost ever was. It was like what appointment, television on a major network was all about, as far as that era goes. And it was at its peak. Season 2 was cooking. They had a time travel narrative going on. It was crazy. And then the writer's strike happened, and they literally just went, oh, all of that didn't happen. They just had to abandon whatever the fuck it was they were doing in that period of the show. And it completely derailed any chance that show had of succeeding, because they had to spend the next 2 seasons and the reboot trying to make up for how much the writer's strike fucked up their plans. But they weren't alone. There was a lot. There was I think like you mentioned the document Quantum of Solace, being so slapped together that movie, the one time I watched it, I walked out of it and I was like, that was a commercial. It was just a James Bond lookbook for marketing, for the movie. We didn't get the movie itself. And I don't know, what do you associate, what do you remember specifically from the goings on, or what even made it happen back then?
Yeah, well, what I remember was one of the bigger ones was, I don't know if you've seen Friday Night Lights, but the second season of Friday Night Lights is notorious for having a storyline, a subplot where Landry, one of the show's main characters, literally murders a guy in a show about high school football. And he literally kills somebody, and then that season of the show is about him trying to cover it up, and it's awful. And so that was a part of the writer's strike. And I mean, if people don't know, essentially the reason why this stuff happens is because while the writers are on strike, they can't work on a film or TV show in any fashion when it comes to writing. So they are not able to write a single word. They aren't able to contribute a single word, and they aren't able to do rewrites. So studios are then left working with scripts that have already been completed, or that they dig up from their script graveyard, or they have non-writers writing these shows and movies. As you already stated, with Quantum of Solace, Daniel Craig was literally on set writing his own dialogue, and then you had movies that was a notorious summer for shitty blockbusters, because you had Transformers 2, you had Terminator Salvation, Dragon Ball Evolution, just the worst of the worst franchise shit, and it was because of this writer's strike.
Wow. See, I completely forgot about that Landry storyline. But
yeah, it's so awful.
So I just want to ask you, aren't these writers opening themselves up to just be replaced by the thing they're asking studios not to use?
The AI?
AI, yeah. Isn't that aren't they basically inviting their usage? Because we don't have an actual writer on the set, but we have every draft available to us, and we can just tell the algorithm to take all of that information and then give us a script that fits all these parameters we want, or just fine-tune the scene we're working on today. They are I can see why they're very fucking paranoid about it, because it seems like exactly what a cynical producer would do to just get to the easiest route logistically to a produced daily that they can incorporate into the whole at some point, because that's all that they're looking for, which is why what is it, Rings of Power, and is it another Amazon show or it's House of the Dragon? They are continuing without their showrunners, and is that gonna harm those shows? Or what if we find out someday that part of House of the Dragon that season was done by ChatGPT, and that episode will have a reference acknowledging it? Is that inevitable, or is there covenants blocking them from doing that presently?
Well, right now, the only safeguard, and it's not even really a safeguard, but the only thing that the WGA and the AMPTP have in place regarding AI is the AMPTP has agreed to meet with the WGA once a year to talk about it. And that's it. They'll get together in a room with the WGA and they'll once a year and they'll say, here's how much AI has it advanced. And that's pretty much it. So there's nothing stopping the studios right now from looking into AI. And so, yes, I think that's a distinct possibility, you know, what you were talking about. But I guess at this point, I think like the government would have to step in regarding that stuff if they wanted to, because the thing about having something like AI write your programming is AI can't really be credited because AI is pulling all of its resources from other things, the internet, all of the published works of human history, AI is pulling from in order to write what it is writing. And so I don't know, that's kind of the question, I think.
And just to illustrate that, as an experiment, on an article I was writing about the North Dakota legislature, the Republican majority leaders were going to be having a press conference, and I had to sit and watch it so that I could know what I needed to write and know what they had said. But I just went to ChatGPT and I asked them, okay, generate an article, this word count, about this subject. And since it was just going to the internet and looking at what articles existed, it could only write about things that had happened in the past. It could only write an article about an event that didn't happen on the date it said it did. It said it took place in a different location, said it involved different individuals, because it wasn't actually observing the actual event like I was, because no one had written about it yet. Because there's nothing in the whole of the hive mind for it to plug into. So I don't know. It still requires the human element, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. Because my job still feels secure, because as a hyper local newspaper in that sense, there isn't going to be an algorithm that can be finely tuned enough to get all the information that actually needs to be included in something so that it's pertinent. And in the same way, even in this broad sense, it's like, that nightmare scenario I pointed out, where the director or the producer just sits there and just types in some, does Mad Libs and then gets a new script in 5 seconds. Like, that's unlikely to because eventually a human being's going to look at it and go, oh no, that makes no sense. Or, oh, that feels really wrong. Like, that's inevitably where these things go. But larger than that, beyond just the AI concern, should there be more writers working in Hollywood, or are the people who are representative of the WGA, should they just be better compensated? What should be happening more? Should there be more elevation of people within that line of work, or do those people just deserve a bigger slice of the pie than they're getting?
I think that the people who are there now should probably just be compensated better, because as I said earlier, one of the things that the WGA is asking for is more writers on TV shows per episode count. And this is the one issue that I have personally with what they're asking for. This is the one time I would side with the giant corporations, in that I don't know if having a certain number of writers, or a mandatory number of writers, is conducive to the artistic medium, because some TV shows are the brainchild of one person and one person only, and they write everything. Some TV shows have a writer's room. Some TV shows have a duo of a creative team duo that writes everything. And so I don't know if just tacking on more people to the writer's room is necessarily, conducive to an artistic medium such as writing. So, I think, keep the people that are there now, pay them better. We don't need more.
Gotcha. So what's going to happen to the content that's coming down the pipe? What's being delayed? What is actually going to be, have a detrimental consequence of, either being made without the showrunners present, or being made much later than expected?
Well, right now, and this is being updated daily. Like, I think I've seen every single day this week a new show has said that they are being delayed, or a new movie. And it started with the variety programs and the talk shows, the late night talk shows. Those were shut down immediately because, you know, those shows are written usually the day before or the day of. And so no more talk shows, no more SNL for the foreseeable future. Then, in the last couple days or so, we've seen the more, scripted stuff, the more like bigger stuff get delayed or canceled. The final season of Stranger Things got delayed yesterday. Marvel's Blade has now been delayed. Season 4, this is a really interesting one. Season 4 of the Paramount Plus show Evil.
Yeah.
It wrapped production early. They just chose to, stop production because last night the WGA members were picketing the location that Evil was filming at, and they couldn't film anymore because the picketing was going on in the background. So they just said, "All right, that's a wrap for this season. We'll edit around it," basically.
Yeah, and that's a direct result of the direct action efforts of the guild. Conover himself is in those picket lines. He's standing like 8 to 10 hours a day because like they all go in shifts specifically because they know like either you cause them to delay the time where the studios can make their money when it can be done. And sometimes it is just easier just to be like, okay, you're done, see you next year, see you when this is all over, because they're not just going to keep paying everybody. So there are consequences both ways, and like they both can act like it's the other's fault that it's happening to a degree. But yeah, it's a deliberate, it's interesting seeing these kinds of tactics being done in America, because I know we've had some strikes recently. I know with like the rail people and whatnot, but this is the writers. This is the industry itself, so they can coordinate their activities a little better. So we, what I mean? Like there's no one in the media who genuinely wants you to see what like a rail worker is trying to do, in order to maintain their welfare and way of life, but it's the writers we're really concerned with, as you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is a story we probably no doubt will be checking in on, in the coming months. But Godspeed to the writers.
Because that one dude, the guy from The Bear, he has a job at a movie theater, or like that's what he was hoping to get. Mm-hmm. Some people are going to McDonald's. You do what you got to do in this world. Sometimes, you got to take the gigs that maybe don't make sense, for your career. You're an art house guy. You have strange little movies about, ghost stories and, all kinds of other, nonsense, reimagining fairy tales. So, yeah, of course you're going to start taking gigs from, the House of Mouse so you can reimagine all the weird stuff from the 60s and the 70s that they have in their stable. And sometimes it's more successful than others. I'm talking, of course, about David Lowery and his recent release, Pan and Wendy, which I watched and ultimately found boring, and I found myself hating it. The whole time I was watching it, I was just like, can I just watch Hook instead? Can I turn this off and just watch Hook, which is the superior Peter Pan movie piece of art adaptation for me personally? I don't know. I know a lot of people hated that movie at the time and hate it today, but I have affection for it. And this I have no affection for. It was just hollow. It was so weird. Everything about it was so weird, and but not in a way that was interesting. It was just like why did you decide to do this? Was the question I kept on asking myself. Because this guy is a supreme filmmaker. I see his name, I take it seriously, but I could not take this movie seriously for some reason. It just didn't work. And I know that part of the problem ultimately is that it was just put to streaming. Its vision wasn't there, its budget wasn't there. I no doubt this was impacted by COVID and the weird price model that Disney has to operate on in order to keep the train wreck rolling forever. But this was wasted money. This is a movie that we did not need. It didn't soar to new heights. It just kept on diving down into dark little nooks and crannies of the Pan mythos that no one really needs or cares about. Captain Hook is better as a character when he's just a weird brigand who's just a part of the tableau. I don't need to have him be sympathetic. Like Dustin Hoffman's portrayal and the way that character is written is the ideal way to do it, because there's mystique, and there was nothing about Pan or Wendy, any of the characters in this, that ultimately lived up to the mystique of the property. Which is, why it was so shocking to me that immediately after this movie ended, Disney Plus was like, "Hey, do you want to watch Pete's Dragon?" And I thought to myself, I don't know, I've heard better things about this movie, and confirming it for myself was great, because it made Peter Pan all the more disappointing, because Pete's Dragon was so fucking good. It's a live action Studio Ghibli movie, basically. It's those same kind of sensibilities. It has an environmental message that isn't preachy. It's just kind of practical, and it doesn't try and do too much, because the original Pete's Dragon is really whimsical and homespun and silly. It's that animated dragon. So actually making it seem real in a sense that isn't just grimdark, but it's magical realism taken to a very successful place and a very superior movie, and then I just wanted to watch The Green Knight once that was over, but I have no clue where that is on streaming. So I guess I would rate Peter, a skip, and Pete, definitely watch it, because it's a pretty dang good movie.
Yeah, I think that I think we need to call it a day on the Peter Pan live action adaptations. I don't know why that's such a thing that's a thing that filmmakers have such an obsession with, because we've gotten this, and we've gotten Ben Zeitlin did Wendy, which wasn't very good, and then there was depending on who you ask, Finding Neverland, and so let's just call it a day on the live action Peter Pan.
It's been done. There even was a live action Peter Pan with Jason Isaacs as Captain Hook. That was not even 20 years ago. So yeah, enough is enough. Spare us. Yeah. There's other things we could be watching, like Star Wars Vision. What even is this? Is this just a bunch of shorts? Is this an anthology show?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is season 2 of Star Wars Visions, and I think I've seen both seasons, and between season 1 and 2, I think the sort of mission statement of this show changed a bit, because season 1 was basically what if we did a bunch of anime shorts set in the Star Wars universe, and we got a bunch of Japanese animation studios to do shorts? And I think that with season 2 now, they were really, really looking closely at Love, Death, and Robots over on Netflix, because their mission statement has sort of changed in that, hey, why don't we do a bunch of shorts, but let's do them from animation studios from all over the world in all these different styles? Because if season 1 had a downfall, it was that it leaned too heavily on the anime art style, and every single short looked the exact same. But with this one, season 2, they've gotten a bunch of studios, and they've gotten a bunch of heavy hitter studios. You got Aardman's in there. You've got studios from, I think, South Africa, Korea. There's a couple from South America in there. Just all these different art styles. And I know that Cartoon Saloon did one. The Irish animation studio that did the Secret of Kells movie. And so, yeah, you've got a bunch of heavy hitters this season, and yeah, this is great. I mean, I watched all 9 episodes. The shorts are only at most about 15 minutes long, and this season,
holy cow.
Yeah, the animation is incredible, and yeah, this season just had a bunch of really, really great, stuff, and there wasn't a bad one in the bunch. I mean, there's ones that are, definitely better than others, but they're just nice to look at. And I would tell anyone to go out and watch all 9 episodes, but if you want just a taste of how good this is, just go and watch the very first episode, because they've led with their best foot forward. And the first episode is incredible. It's called Sith, and it's the style of it is really interesting, because what happens is throughout the short, the short gets more color added to it. So it starts off very like black and white, and it almost looks like unfinished storyboards. And then as the short goes on, they add more color and they add more detail. And then by the end of the short, it looks just crazy. Wow. Go see it. I mean, this is one of the better Star Wars things. I think they released it for May the 4th this year, and kind of under the radar, but this was great.
That's really neat. I'm gonna have to check that out. But speaking of starting with your best foot forward, you got to do that with a show. You really have to make an impression, like that first episode of like True Detective, for example, because HBO has a new show about the House Plumbers, and this first episode is a little rocky. There's some very questionable editing in the first half of the pilot of this show, a historical comedy drama. Like, it's basically like a workplace satire farce, about the people who did all the skullduggery and bullshit for Nixon, during the Watergate era, starting around the time of the Pentagon Papers, when Daniel Ellsberg dumped all of the Vietnam files on those newspapers. So this, if you are a history nerd like myself, this plays nicely as a backdrop to all the other movies that Hollywood has made about this era and this subject, because you finally get to see like the assholes like E. Howard Hunt and God, what's his fucking name, G. Gordon Liddy, like as basically, like, I don't know, in another era they would have been played by what's his name, John C. Reilly and fucking Will Ferrell. Like, this would have been hysterical had those guys done it, but it would have gone too gonzo, because what this show does really well, as it kind of finds its footing and the actors really sink into their roles and start having fun, you get the sense that like all this happened. It's like it's all really nuts, but it's all true, and it's fucked up that it's true. And it just makes you wonder what's true today. What was even true? Like, what is even true about what we're seeing? You have to ask that question, because this is HBO, this is Max, whatever the fuck you want to call it these days. Like, I typed it in that way at the document, and then it was just changed to Max when I came back, and I was like, oh, what's going on? And it's because everything is being rewritten, but you really can't rewrite what is hysterical about history. And these individuals are really, really silly people who took themselves way too seriously and almost destroyed this great nation that we live in. But it's really entertaining watching these actors do what they're doing, and I recommend watching it.
Yeah, I actually, had we recorded this episode earlier, I wouldn't have seen this, but I did actually watch the first episode last night. And it's pretty funny. It can be a little hit or miss, I think. And I think that Woody Harrelson's character is a little bit too much of a cartoon character, where
John's always jutting out.
Yeah, his really, really strange accent. I mean, I don't know I'm assuming that's what that guy actually sounded like in real life, but his sort of like gruff like tone is very weird. And yeah, but I mean, it was watchable. I thought I really liked the dinner scene, the Hitler record scene. That was pretty funny.
And that's real. Like G. Gordon Liddy is a freakish part of the American experiment. He existed in pop culture for so long that he was on Politically Correct with Bill Maher, back in the day, like when that was on regular TV, and he was the other hosts. I believe one of them was Marilyn Manson, and like the mom from the Brady Bunch was there too. Like the 90s were an amazing time because they still had holdovers from like the creatures who did the bidding of Dirty Dick Nixon. But yeah, like it was fun seeing like that dude from Mad Men show up. I just like he's forever typecast in this era. He just will never be able to escape it. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with it, and that might be why I'm overly enthusiastic, because I'm just looking forward to creating a supercut of all of like Hollywood's view of what happened. You know, when you take like all the President's Men and The Post and like all that kind of stuff together. But I'm a weirdo. That's the kind of things I do. In my spare time, once I'll confess, I made a cut of Drive that I called the Kavinsky cut, because I replaced the soundtrack with Kavinsky songs.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
I found the DVD for it, and I'm like, I don't have the heart to actually plug this in and see how awful it is. But Testarossa Auto Drive is a pretty bitchin' song. I was reminded of that. But what is going on here with this show? What is Unicorn?
Yeah, so this is the new show from Gedney Tartakovsky, who I will follow to the ends of the earth. And so that is why I watched this show with such a horrible name. I just think that the name is god-awful. But the show itself, pretty good. And I mean, Tartakovsky never misses, and it's definitely not the case with this. This is really awesome. There's only 2 episodes out right now, so that, I mean, and they're shorter episodes, so I mean there isn't much to this show yet, but I really like the premise. Essentially what the show is, it's very heady for him too, for Tartakovsky, because he does a lot of like wordless protagonists, you know, between like Samurai Jack and then the caveman from Primal. You know, neither one of them talks very much, but this is the very high concept, very heady and very talkative for him. And what the premise basically is that there are these 3 immortal warriors that like participate in events all throughout the course of history, and what they do is they inhabit a new body every time they do it, and then when that body dies or when they are killed, their soul gets absorbed by their like robot companion, and then their immortal robot companion, you know, once history moves forward, he deposits their soul into a new body when it is needed. And so it's pretty nuts. Like basically it's these 3 immortal warriors that sort of use random people's bodies to, you know, do their bidding, and then once they're killed they go and take another body, and it's pretty interesting. Yeah, it is.
This is the most fucked up magical girl anime ever, basically.
Yeah, it is. It's a pretty messed up concept for. I mean, this is an Adult Swim show, so they can be a little bit more, racy. They can be a little bit more violent with it. It's not a standard Cartoon Network show, but yeah, for a cartoon, it is pretty high concept, and really enjoy it. I mean, definitely gonna keep watching. I loved Primal so much, and this is, you know, just more of that Tartakovsky goodness, and it's available on HBO Max now, and I really am thankful for that, because one thing that HBO Max has been doing more recently is uploading Cartoon Network and Adult Swim shows the day after they premiere on actual TV, and so yeah, I would encourage anyone to go and watch this on Max now.
Because, yeah, God knows, they got rid of Mr. Pickles and, you know, Uncle Grandpa fucking quick. They got to give us something new to watch. I'll have to check that out. That is amazing. Have you ever seen Hotel Transylvania?
I haven't, no. I know he did those, though, didn't he?
He did. For what they are, they're kind of fun. They're basically just animated Adam Sandler, Genndy Tartakovsky, you know, family movies. So don't expect much, but yeah, like I would, they're good palate cleanse every once in a while, because you can be like, oh yeah, at least I like how it looks, you know, and it has like a genuinely cartoony sensibility, because so many, like, because of Pixar, they all have to take themselves so fucking seriously, and slapstick can't be a thing that people laugh at. God. But that brings us to our feature review, and my intro for this, we were recording this on a Sunday morning. I saw this Friday evening, and James Gunn with this movie, in some respects, this is an evaluation of himself. This is him doing his, like a lot of filmmakers, doing his therapy in public, because he knows as a public figure, he kind of has to. He can't exercise his demons just on Twitter, because that's what got him in trouble in the first place. But as far as these movies and these characters that he has made so many love and care about, he has been the best storyteller within the medium of superhero cape shit. He elevates it from the cape shit. He took Cosmic Marvel from this niche little weird subset of the comics that I was really fascinated with and taken with, and he made it mainstream in a way that robbed me of it, which is what happens to all good things, because these were the characters that, stood out amongst this crowd and were truly allowed to be all that they could possibly be away from the confines of Manhattan, which eventually swallows up all Marvel characters. Eventually, you're just in the Big Apple fighting crime, even though you're a space god, which is what makes the environment. It's being open to all the possibilities. Before Rick and Morty made it cool, but doing it in a way that is rooted in reality and not just in chaos. What is order here and what is centering here is emotion, it's family, it's trying to grapple with loss, trying to grapple with things you cannot have. This is a Marvel movie actually about something. All of these Guardians of the Galaxy movies have been. And in this one in particular, it turned me into a blubbering mess at the end. And Marvel movies don't make me cry. They make my eyes roll. But like the moist meter of my eyes was to like such an extent this go around that by the end I had to just find a quiet place and be alone, because it hit me in such a place, seeing everything come full circle, and that's what James Gunn has done here. He's gone full circle, closing his circle rather, with all of his time at Marvel. His entire impact of it is encapsulated in this trilogy that took a long time to there was a lot of delay to actually getting it, but you can just tell that everyone involved gave their all. And if this movie doesn't make $1 billion, there is something really wrong with the world, because this is the one that you should be seeing. This is the one that you should want to succeed, because this is when it's done right. And I think it sets the tone for what his tenure at DC is going to be like. Because no one does superhero movies better than James Gunn. That is my hot take for the day, and he has proven it with this movie. I know it might be uneven for some, but I was captured along with the whole ride. It was quintessential, comic book storytelling on the big screen, in widescreen. It gave me everything I wanted, and that's really all I can ask of it. But where did you leave it?
Yeah, well, I think that as we get further and further away from the Infinity Saga, that people, and these characters disappear and these storylines disappear one by one and are replaced by different characters, worse characters and worse storylines, that people are really going to be pining for the better days. And this movie just adds another thing to the pile of problems with phase 4 and 5 of the MCU. Absolutely. Between the shoddy writing and the directionlessness of phase 4 and the awful, incredibly superficial, meaningless political overtures, this sort of adds a new problem. And what that problem is going to be is an inability for these films to get out from under nostalgia. Yeah. Because this movie gives you a taste of that old MCU. It gives you a taste of, it makes you remember this is what these movies can be after this string of shit that we've gotten. And so for me personally, that was enough. And I really enjoyed this. I have a couple of reservations that I'll get into later. But on a whole, yeah, really enjoyed myself.
Because that's the thing. This is a movie that, with a straight face, will be like, oh yeah, this is the year 2014 version of a character, and take that concept seriously. That is such an absurd comic booky trope to have in a mainstream movie, but to have it like be handled with maturity and grace by the writer, you know, and not just, you know, something that is ignored. You know, like, I don't know, because like you could totally see some producer being like, well, why can't they just get back together? You know, like, why can't they just fall back in love? You know, and the end result is something a lot more interesting because it hews close to the medium for a change. You know, in that respect, like I was kind of reminded of, because like, I don't know, like Spider-Man and Peter Parker, Mary Jane, they're never gonna really be back together again, from what I understand. Because of, you know, that creative decision. And now the same thing has, you know, affected these characters, and it didn't piss me off that is the end result of the fate of these, you know, the storytelling here. I don't know. I'm curious what your reservations are. Just because like my moistened eyes couldn't see clearly, you know, like, because I don't like where were the missteps, or like the hang-ups in the giddy up, as it were.
Yeah, so I guess, you know, my big problem with this, just to get them out of the way, is okay, I'll say I didn't, and it wasn't because of the animal abuse, but I did not like those scenes, those flashback scenes. And here's why. It's because I feel James Gunn has been working exclusively in the superhero movie genre for the past decade. And the trend that I'm noticing with his superhero films is that he almost goes into them, I feel like, I don't have any proof of this, of course, but I feel as if he goes into them with sort of the Pixar mentality of, here's the scene where you're gonna cry, and this is the scene I want you to cry at. And you know, Pixar, that's what Pixar has become known for. You know, everybody always talks about, you know, what's the scene from the Pixar movie that made you cry or whatever. And I feel like Gunn almost comes from that school of thought, where in Guardians 1, it's Peter Quill's mommy issues. In Guardians 2, it's his daddy issues. In Peacemaker, it's Peacemaker's daddy issues. So it's a lot of issues, and so, you know, these are the scenes that I think are probably the least well executed in all of his works. And in this one, I don't think it's any different. I think that I found those scenes, those flashbacks with Rocket, to be incredibly emotionally manipulative. And I knew from the second that first flashback happened or started, I knew exactly where we were going with those scenes. Exactly. And between that and like the tweeness of Rocket's pals, I just couldn't handle it. Like how they were all like, yeah, the sky, is that the sky? And just like, I couldn't do it. And so that was my main problem, I guess, with and you know, we'll talk about this later, but that is, you know, when I look at him as the writer and director of the next Superman movie, that is where I'm like, oh man, I really hope that he can handle that material. You know, I really hope that he can do the emotional stuff better in that movie, but we can save that for later. But yeah, I mean, that's my big reservation with the movie. I don't know. Those just didn't hit for me. I knew what they were doing, and I think that they served their purpose, those scenes, but I saw through them.
Because I was totally just caught in the net, dude. That stuff worked for me. I was because I found it grimdark. You know, like it was twee, but it was and it was excessively twee and cutesy and whatever, and it was obvious exactly what was going to fucking happen. And yeah, it would have been more artful to not just like cut their heads off in front of us, which is like effectively what he does.
Yeah.
You know, because he could have hit it a little bit. Not that it needed to, like, it could have happened off screen, but there was definitely a more artful way to, you know, get that tragedy and that backstory in there. Like he could have had all the cutesy twee shit, you know, in there, and then just had like a throwaway line or like a half reference to it, but it was just so in your face. But at the same time, speaking of faces, that part was pretty awesome. Seeing his revenge, you know, Rocket's revenge, and how he clawed off the High Evolutionary's face. Because as a villain, he was like the blood pumping through the deader parts of the movie, and that's why those sequences maybe worked for me a little bit more, because of how much I was enjoying him on screen and how depraved and evil he was.
Yeah, that was awesome. He's great. The guy from Peacemaker, the actor's name is Chukwudi Ajui, I think is how you pronounce his name.
Yeah.
And his High Evolutionary I thought was great. It's nice to have a villain in these movies again that is just a straight douchebag, instead of, you know, in the more recent Marvel films, we've been getting these villains that always have to be redeemable in some way, or they have to, you know, we have to understand their motivations and whatnot. But it's nice to get a villain again that is just a straight, you know, animal experimenting, like eugenist douchebag,
like a literal like exterminator of entire worlds.
Yeah,
you know, like a vengeful god that will create a utopia and just completely blow it up at the smallest flaw. You know, it's the most awful, evil, you know, thing that anyone could ever be. Yeah, the lack of moral relativism really saves this movie too, because the last thing we needed was this guy being preachy, like Kang was. Like I would much rather have, like, you know, this actor, I would rather have him take over as Kang than have Jonathan Majors do it at this point, because I don't know, he just had command. Like, he was awesome.
Yeah. He was treating this as if it was Shakespeare.
Yes. Yeah. Because it basically was, you know, like, as far as that goes. Like, there's a lot of tragedy in this movie, but at the same time, like, it is a little excessive and it's a little cloying. Because we introduced this planet full of humans just for 5 minutes later to just blow it all up and to like literally show them getting vaporized. Because this movie has a mean edge. It's nasty in a way that like none of the other Guardians movies are. Like, it's almost callous in the way that it just treats the loss of, you know, life. And it's funny for a movie being so preachy about that topic. Like the whole part at the end where they're getting all of we're just getting the sentient sapient species off, right? We're not going to be, you know, like, we don't care about the horde of animals in this ark that's blowing up right now. You know, so we have to have that shot of Drax carrying an elephant on his shoulders at the end of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, that was, the ending that, you know, the third act of this movie, it does get a little stuffed.
It has the return of the king problem.
Yeah, like they sort of felt the need to give, you know, they needed to give every character their final sort of send off, their final sort of like goodbye before, you know, ostensibly, you know, the end, like hopefully the end. I mean, that's something else we're going to talk. We got to talk about those end credit scenes, but yeah, I mean, the ending was definitely pretty stuffed. I could do without like having two fake out deaths between Rocket having the fake out death, and then there was that Peter Quill like jumping into space fake out death that they did.
They fucking killed him when his face puffed up. I was like, the balls on this man, the balls to kill Peter Quill like this. And no, they have to, you know, give the gold guy a chance to redeem himself, you know, and do something heroic for a change. Like what was the whole point of Adam Warlock in this movie?
Yeah, why
was he there?
I think he was there just so that they could make good on the after credit scenes from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, because that was what they were teasing, was Adam Warlock. And yeah, he wasn't, I mean, they're probably going to make more. Yeah, I didn't need the second death fake out. That was sort of weird. And yeah, the Adam Warlock stuff, that was all very rushed. But yeah, hopefully that character gets his due further down the road, because he is a very cool comic character. And, I did like Will Poulter's portrayal of him. But yeah, I guess to get on more positive stuff about the movie, because I feel like I've been a little bit negative. I was mostly, I did mostly like this movie, and I want to talk about like the aesthetics and just the lived-in feel of this movie compared to stuff like Ant-Man or like Mandalorian, where all these places, all these settings, they seem like you could reach out and actually touch things, and you could. And there's something gross, and there's something, I mean, that whole sequence at the, I think it was called the orgoscope, was incredible. The sort of the organic base and the colorful spacesuits that were a callback to 2001: A Space Odyssey. And
they were so impractical and silly looking.
Yeah.
But they still, like, those were real. Those were, like, Nathan Fillion was wearing that.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, the suits that the guards were wearing, the sort of the armor or whatever that was, and then yeah, the what I was talking about was like the different colored spacesuits.
When they were jumping in there.
Yeah, when they were jumping in there, and I mean that whole sequence was just incredible. Like how just the look of that company, I guess, is what it was, and everything down to the little things like the secretary woman that was played by James Gunn's wife, how she had that little ball that was a microphone, and she would move it to be in front of her mouth when she would speak, and then she would put it like behind her when she wasn't speaking. I loved all that, and this movie just had a very like lived in feel, and that's because a lot of this stuff were actually sets and actually like on location filming, because I don't know if you remember this, but one of the very first things to leak out about this movie were set photos from when they filmed the scenes when they first land on Counter Earth in that neighborhood. And, all that stuff was real. The neighborhood was an actual neighborhood, and all of the animal stuff were actual costumes. It wasn't just CGI'd people. Those were all real costumes. And I have to commend the movie for that.
The car that they're driving even has chair beads on it, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Because it's like an Asian bat family. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not trying to like get us canceled or pulled off the air or anything like that, but that made me laugh a little bit. I know exactly what you mean, though, because all those other movies that have like, I think Gore over at Film Threat refers to it as like the IKEA chair problem, because like when it comes to the imagination of set dressers on these billion-dollar franchises, the best they can come up with is buying literally something off the IKEA catalog and just passing it off as being, they're on Coruscant, like, isn't it chic? Come on, like, you try a little harder, like there was like a specific like toy that was reused across like Star Trek and like shows like Sliders as like a prop. Sometimes it's a scanner, sometimes it's a gun, sometimes it's just like, I don't know what, it's like a butt plug in some show, you never know. But like they keep reusing it because they have imagination, and it's like, and it always like functionally was looked effective. Why is this the best we can do? Like, this shows you the best that you can do if you're using everything at your disposal. It's why those first 3 Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movies are so superior, because especially the first one, because that was the one that most leaned into the practical and corporeal production choices, when it came to like incorporating CG into it, or using forced perspective and bigatures. I don't know if we had bigatures in this, but like everything still was convincing, which is ultimately what you want. You want it to look like it's actually being shot by a camera and not just conjured out of thin air. And it's amazing when you can do that with something as fantastical as this, which is why it was so helpful that they could just, go to some New Jersey neighborhood and, shoot, or wherever that was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. I think it's definitely a testament to Gunn's sort of background doing like trauma films and like, splatter fest type stuff. And he definitely has like a reverence, I think, for, real stuff, real like lived in things. And
but in that token, also really gross deaths. It's really graphic. I don't know if I would want my child to see this fucking movie.
No, definitely not.
To speak to your criticisms a little bit and like a little bit of support, because that was my thought. I was like, yeah, I think this is awesome, but anybody under the age of 13 is bound to be traumatized by this movie. Like, this is like Watership Down levels of trauma. Like, without like being deliberately explicit about what happens, but my God, it's fucked up. But at the same time, if your kid loves the superhero action shit, this gives you everything that you're looking for on that front. It has the long take, like widescreen panel splash page sequences, like that hallway fight where like
that was great.
That was great. Just how it just everything just slowed down, and then the door everything just ramps back up, and that was wonderful. That was the big goodbye. That where all the money got spent. I wonder how long it took to fucking shoot that, because like that was how Guardians 2 began, was with one of those sequences when they're fighting that big monster. So I was like waiting for like, when are we gonna get that from him? Because like you've alluded to, there's a lot of things that James Gunn knows he has to put to his stuff, and right along with the "you're gonna cry here," he knows you have to have the "you're gonna go that fucking ruled." He has to give you that too. And I guess the hat off to him on at least that, because he nailed it there.
Yeah, that sequence was great. I mean, a lot of the action in this movie was awesome. There what was it called? The War Pig, that one animal creation that was just the scenes with that and how he got his head ripped off by Adam Warlock, and yeah, that was awesome. And just to speak about that hallway scene, one of the things I wanted to cut out or shout out in this movie was, and you can, I mean, this has been through all three movies, but the use of music, of licensed music. And that hallway scene, of course, was scored to Beastie Boys. And, I just love, I'm glad that Gunn stuck with that through all three of these movies. And I think that, I guess I don't know this for sure. I didn't look into this too much, but the first movie, I think, is music from like the 70s, and then the second movie is music from like the 80s, and then this third movie is mostly music from like the 90s, I believe, is probably how it works. And
there's a glaring exception at the the very end of the movie. Yeah,
that's right. And yeah, I just love his use of that stuff, the needle drops and how he opens the movie. I mean, this movie opens very unexpectedly on almost like a down note, where it's just Rocket walking through the street listening to Radiohead's Creep. And it's a very down tempo way to begin this movie as the opening credits are scrolling on the screen. And so, yeah, I had to shout that out, because that was incredible.
Because I guess we might as well bring it up. This comes off of, because there are references to it. I don't know if you notice those Easter eggs, but the Christmas special. Because we like bypassed. We were both going to talk about that, and then we were like, "There's nothing to this. This is just silly," and it is just silly. It was just so that they could have a newspaper with a headline saying Kevin Bacon, abducted by aliens, tells his story. Because that's basically the plot of that. But yeah, apparently after being, drunk one day, that is the vibe that everyone is being forced to live in, because Peter Quill, can't get over Gamora from 2014 not loving him, like the Gamora that got killed by Thanos. But that's that in the setup, basically, because this circles back to the whole notion of, do you own your property? And if you are if you are the product of somebody else's work, as Rocket Raccoon is, what if that person just wants their intellectual property back? Because that's the plot. It's basically about a corporation being like, oh, I made that raccoon, I need his brain, bring him to me. And that is everything that happens, you know, from frame up after that sequence is over.
Yeah, that is very interesting. I didn't actually think about that slant to it, but yeah, that is definitely the case. And yeah, it's sort of an interesting aspect of it that they didn't explore, because again, going back to sort of the unrepentant like assholeness of the bad guy, you know, he doesn't bring up that fact very often. He's just kind of like, oh, I just want to destroy it. And when I think that Gunn probably could have included that as sort of a message in that, like, hey, I own you, and so I get to have you back, but he didn't. And so, yeah, again, kind of a testament to not making the villain a redeemable person. And you know, one thing, while we're on that subject, one thing that I thought was very interesting was that he chose not to show his death. That's something that I was thinking about it, because they show him on the floor there with his disgusting red skull face, and but that's it. That's the last time you see him. And you know, you can assume that he blew up on his ship, I guess, because Rocket refused to kill him. But I wonder if they're gonna do something with that guy down the road.
You know, I hope they do, because I love this character. I want this villain to come back. He rules. And and I don't know, because we might, whatever team that remains of the Guardians of the Galaxy at the end of this movie, I hope the lineup gets beefed up a little bit before they trot out another movie. But yeah, I don't know. It's going to be even harder and harder to get even the people that they made the Guardians at the end, you'll meet up again. So I don't know. They almost need to have the Guardians be on ice for a really long time, so that the next time that they show up, it's for the big event movie, and then they can have them be wiped out and then replace the roster with whoever the fuck they want, and actually have plan it a little bit better. But I don't know. Maybe we don't want Rocket to get killed after everything he went through here. But I guess, what did you make of the after credit work from this movie? Yeah. Was it just there to make you cry? It was some more. Was it just more of that?
So, are you speaking about the variant, the words that came up on screen? Is that where you're? I
guess I was gonna get to that, but just the one of him, going back to find his grandpa.
Oh yeah. No, that was good. I thought that was as sort of the ending of the movie. I mean, the after credit scene with him and his grandpa was fine, but the actual ending of the movie, I thought,
with that dangling. Yeah, like, how is he going to come back? Like, is he ever going to, should he come back?
Well, I was kind of speaking more along the lines of what you were talking about with his grandpa. I thought that was very well earned. That's kind of been Star-Lord's arc throughout these three movies, is that, he's never wanted to return to Earth because, that's where all of his memories lie. That's where all of his, trauma lies. But him finally going back and sort of confronting that, I thought that was pretty well earned. But the very, very end, oh man, I audibly, like, in the theater when it came up with Star-Lord will return, I audibly was like, really, like, come on, because like, let's just let it. I mean, if you want to do a different Guardians film with a different team, go ahead, but let's just let Star-Lord be done.
Yeah. We don't need someone new carrying on the name. In fact, the good movie to make is Star-Lord, gets back in the saddle and finds out somebody has been using his name, and then has to reestablish himself as Star-Lord. I have just done all their work for them. The writer's strike is going on. They can have that one for free. That's what I would do. Let him be on the shelf for a little bit, and then have that be the entire movie. That would be fun. If it's just like ego-driven and silly like that. Like, you're like, did you learn nothing in your time with your grandpa? Come on. Like that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, if they want to do another Guardians, I suppose they could. But I mean, at the end of the day, I really just wish that, as much as this film seems like an end, like a definitive end, I mean, it really probably isn't. And I really just wish they could let sleeping dogs lie, because I'm not really interested in a James Gunn-less Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Like, it's not like, who are they gonna get to do a Guardians of the Galaxy movie now? You know, I don't want to see fucking Peyton Reed's Guardians of the Galaxy, or I don't want to see, like, I don't know, like Francis Lawrence's Guardians of the Galaxy. You can't replace.
What about Benson and Moorhead?
I mean, maybe, but their comic book stuff hasn't been the greatest either, because Moon Knight was kind of not that great. And there are two guys who I think, unfortunately, the studio vision won out over the creative vision for the project that they worked on. And so, I don't know. I wish they would just let it be done, but they're not going to.
Yeah,
but
I don't disagree with you. I would much rather it be put to bed. Because otherwise, this is just his way of being like, now you have to put my brother in Marvel movies forever. You know what I mean? Because now he's whistling that arrow around. What did you think of Yondu's cameo? His little, like, Force Ghost moment at the end.
Yeah, that was fine. I mean, I thought that Sean Gunn's arc was fine, especially for like a minor character. I thought that he had a pretty good arc, and that's what that character should stay as, is a minor character. But I think that there's not a lot of meat to that character otherwise, I don't think. And so I thought that was fine. But yeah, I mean, to speak, I guess, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to touch on, but as we sort of speak more about the future.
Oh, yes.
So Gunn is now over to DC forever, probably. The next 20 years at least, probably at DC. And so as this movie being sort of the most recent point of reference for his career, how do you feel now about him making that jump, and about, what comes next for him, which is the it's the Creature Commandos, and then the Superman movie is the big thing.
See, I think they both are going to fulfill the different, there's two different faces to James Gunn. Mm-hmm. There's his Pixar side, and then there's his trauma side. And Creature Commandos is his trauma side, and the Superman legacy will be his Pixar side. So it is going to have that boilerplate, formula that we will expect from him, unless he really surprises us in some good ways. Because either he's going to make a really earnest and sincere, like, Superman movie, but it'll be more like Sam Raimi Spider-Man than anything else. That's what I feel like we're going to end up getting. It's going to be kind of idealized to whatever Gunn's vision of Superman is, and that era, might be very specific, kind of like how the Ditko comics, era really informed what Raimi Spider-Man movies were like. That's where I think we're going to be, going with it. But at the same time, I really want him to lean into the weirdness of what appears to be his inspiration, which is All-Star Superman from, Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely. Yeah. Like, if you're gonna tease me like that, like, which is what Zack Snyder did, but Zack Snyder doesn't have the capacity to actually truly be comic booky in that way, and really embrace the lineage and the legacy of the character. So give me something with some real meat on its bones, but have it be dry aged a little bit. That's what I'm hoping he does. And based on what we got out of this movie, because it was basically dry aged, like, this thing should have been in the pipeline and made before Infinity War even came out, arguably. It almost I don't know, that's, you could probably go, actually, if you look at this and that, you'll know for sure that it was never going to come out before Infinity War. And then, COVID, of course, happens, but him being canceled really delayed things. You have to admit that. So if he hadn't been canceled, if he had been full steam ahead on making Volume 3 before 2020, do you think that we would have gotten this movie exactly? How would it have been different?
I think that is like the butterfly effect, because I honestly believe that had he never been fired temporarily by Marvel, we never would have gotten Suicide Squad, which means he never would have become this new like DC exec. None of this stuff would have happened. This DC executive stuff. He would have stayed at Marvel, and he would have done Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and maybe more at Marvel after that even. But I think because of his sort of temporarily being fired, that's the only reason why he's even in the DC wheelhouse, I think.
Yeah. Otherwise, he was in the stable. He was totally, saddled and corralled. Even though he was able to make the movies, he has the most individuality out of anybody who's worked on a Marvel project. Fuck you, Taika Waititi. You're just trying too fucking hard. In comparison, because these Guardians of the Galaxy movies always stood out to me, not only because they were cosmic Marvel, but they I used that phrase earlier. They're rooted in the reality a little bit more. They don't feel like just these totally homogenous commercial products that are rammed down our throat every cycle. It actually feels like I'm getting a movie, and not just an experience. And that's in its favor. So and again, and that's why like Ant-Man didn't fucking work. It was plasticine. This you could see the sweat, you could smell the dirt. You can, like, I don't know. It was tactile in that sense. And I really look forward to what he's gonna do, and how deep his influence will extend. Because we wouldn't have Peacemaker, we wouldn't have any of this, we wouldn't have this potential renaissance, on the horizon. Even the possibility of it, DC would still be directionless. It would still be a mess. All of those like fools would still be in control over there. They would not have been fired if another way hadn't been shown, and otherwise they would have been stuck with the Snyderverse. They would have been trapped. If Suicide Squad hadn't come out, they would have been trapped with Zack Snyder. They would have been bullied into releasing Zack Snyder's Justice League, and the end result is he would have that wave would have crested, no matter how well it would have done, and they would have no choice and no imagination but to go with Snyder and just to like give him his second chance instead. That's the dark branch off of reality that could have been. Because James Gunn maybe would have gotten bored eventually. He maybe would have been Favreau'd at some point, but he would have been a Marvel guy instead of being the guy at DC. And it's a little crazy that, hey, edgy tweets pay off if you think about it. That's the moral of the story.
I have I do have hope for Superman Legacy, because he's doing and saying all the right things. I think like he's posting the right stuff on Twitter, the right pictures from his favorite comics, and he's in interviews, he has the awareness, because in interviews he's said that at the very least that, guys, I understand that I can't just make a Guardians of the Galaxy movie and superimpose it onto Superman. I understand that this must be something different. This must feel different. This must look different. It can't just be Guardians of the Galaxy with Superman or something. And so
that would be very inappropriate. It would not work.
Yeah. So I do have hope for it. He has the awareness. He's saying and doing all the right stuff, and so we will see. But go see Guardians.
Absolutely, because I don't know, I didn't check the box office. Is it on track for a Billy?
I think so. I think last time I checked, it was at about 210 million for Thursday night showings and then Friday showings. So there you go. Pretty good.
Pretty good, because it has to beat Super Mario Bros. But that brings up the question: what is the problem that critics have with this movie? Is it the edginess? Is it the how gross and scuzzy some of its moments were? Like it's just, it's too icky for all of its wholesomeness. They can't quite swallow it whole.
I think that's part of it. I've been surprised with the number of, as I've been reading reviews or watching videos reviews, the number of critics that like can't handle like PG-13 animal abuse scenes is very odd to me, because like, I don't know, I feel like these people value animal lives more than they do human lives sometimes, and that it's
kind of the joke to me, because like it's literally like I laughed at the ending when they're all like, I thought we were just taking the intelligent species, and they were like, no, Rocket says they all must come, or whatever the line is, like because that's kind of the message at the end there. It's like, we have to value all of existence, all of Gaia's creatures. It's not just the ones that look like us, even if they are animal human hybrids. Yeah.
Hey, well, there's this trend, like with especially like our generation and people younger than us, where like people can't handle, I mean, animal abuse is awful in real life, like don't get me wrong, but our generation can't handle like animal abuse for some reason, even if it's fake. And there's like whole websites devoted to like, does this movie contain animal abuse? Or like an animal, not even like necessarily abuse, but just scenes with animals that are like hunting scenes or whatever. And it's a very odd quirk about our generation, where we just like can't. And I think that's part of it. I mean, to get back to your original question, I think that's part of it. I think part of it is also like, the law of diminishing returns, where if you look at this movie's scores on Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic and all those aggregator websites, the movies have gone down precipitously, and I think that has to do with part of it. And then I don't know, I think there's also like a lot of critics who are taking the position that Phase 4 of the MCU is actually good because of all of these meaningless political overtures it's making, and the bad MCU is actually this more nostalgic stuff now. And Marvel. Yeah, this is the bad stuff. The nostalgia is bad, and a cast list with too many white people is bad, and yada yada yada. Repeat ad infinitum.
They paint the magic black girl green, so therefore it's racist, actually. That kind of thing. Yeah, it's unhelpful, because this movie has a lot to say for everyone. It has a very neutral but political and ethical message. It's like, should we just let the Elon Musks of the world engineer us by buying Twitter, by buying like the healthcare companies that exist out there, because that's all that the high evolutionary is. He's an elitist who somehow has the ability. He's a technocrat. It's a condemnation of technocrats within a vehicle for selling toys and video games to children. And usually you champion that. But yeah, because it's not, more specific or tuned to, like issues like what's the North Dakota legislature doing this month? Because like that kind of thing seems to be more the priority. Like we have to have the same-sex relationship be in, Lightyear. That needs to be in there. And if when it's in there, it's not offensive. There's nothing wrong with it. That by any measure. But it still is insisted upon, even though they won't show it that way in the Saudi Arabia, in the Middle East and countries like that. I don't know. Like, do you want your messages to be hollow, or do you want them to be genuine? Because like the messages of this movie are wholesome, they're ultimately sweet, and I want to be able to swallow what is being put in front of me, instead of just be annoyed by it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree 100%. And yeah, I give my full endorsement of going out and seeing this movie in theaters. And
yes,
definitely
those people who watch it on Twitter, because like apparently like 10 million people have seen like Super Mario Brothers on Twitter so far. Because like that is how easy like these things get out there. God, what is it? Like, there's some like gambling website that surely must know what they're doing, because they are creating like full-on ads. It's like some Indian betting website, and they are the who fuel the streaming, like illegal streaming websites on the internet right now. It is all their product, because that's what it is. They are the people sending people with the cameras into movies so that they can get cam rips online quickly, so that they can have a URL plastered for their website over top of it, and so that there could be commercials that they have cut into the movie, including people just reading like VO over top of it. Don't ask me how I know this. I just know that it's happening.
Yeah.
My God. Because it's going to be a long time before we get good Marvel again. That's kind of the moral of the story here. Because the individualists are now completely done and gone. What's going on here? What are you trying to do with my phone, November? Yeah, here you go.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, how everything plays out now with, between Gunn leaving and then the writer's strike, we will see.
Bad.
Yeah, the only movie I believe that they have in the can is the Marvels movie, which I personally don't have any hope for, but
I am gonna watch that as it's just for comedic purposes. It looks hysterical, but that brings up a connection, a through line through various subjects over like the last few weeks. Is this massive drawdown coming from Disney? Was that them anticipating the writer's strike? Was that them basically going, hey, we don't have to do half this garbage because we don't actually have anything written yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it totally could be, because as we said earlier, the talks between the writers and the producers guilds have been going on for about 6 weeks, and it's the inevitability of it, I think, was kind of a given, probably after a certain point. And so yeah, I think that they probably knew this was coming. They didn't have quite as much of notice as they did for the 2007 strike, because for the 2007 strike, they had so much notice that they were literally just like, they had writers furiously writing scripts so that they knew that they would have them ready for when the strike happened. And I don't think they had that much notice for this one, but yeah, they definitely had some.
Gotcha. Right on. Well, anything else you wanted to say before we moved on?
I don't think so. I think we can move on. Yeah.
Beautiful. So definitely go see this. Do not watch it on your phone on the questionable website. And check out our mentionables. What was yours this week?
Yeah, so my mentionable is Batman issue 135, the comic book that came out this week. That is Legacy issue 900, which is a pretty big deal. They typically make every 50 issues or so, they call it a landmark issue, and they do a oversized issue, and usually it's the culmination of some sort of arc or some sort of event. And this particular issue was the culmination of Chip Zdarsky's first arc of his run on Batman, and it's been fantastic. His arc has been great. I've just loved every issue of it, and I'm curious to see where he goes with it. He basically sent Bruce Wayne to an alternate version of Gotham where the Joker never existed, and kind of the ramifications that had on Gotham. And then in this last issue, this most recent one, he concluded that arc, and he is hinting at some pretty weird places where he's going with this now, where I don't know if you're familiar with the Batman of Zor-En-Arr.
I am. I love that guy.
Yeah.
He's hysterical.
He's hinting that character is going to play a pretty huge role in his next arc. And so I'm very, very curious to see where that goes. And it was a great issue. And, I'll say, just to kind of piggyback on this, by the time people see this, it'll of course have already happened, but Saturday was Free Comic Book Day. Exactly. this week, and so go. Even though you're too late to go to your comic shop on the actual day, go and visit your local comic shop and get some free comics, because they more than likely have a shit ton of extras, a shit ton of leftovers. So yeah, go to your comic shop and pick up some free comics and buy some stuff too.
Yeah, even Minot. I just found this out. It hot off the presses. We're finally getting I guess another comic book shop. We have one. It's just kind of more of, I don't know if they actually get new stuff. I think they just have like long boxes with a bunch of old 90s shit, more than likely.
Sure.
But someone's opening up a new shop, and I'm going to have to check it out one of these days. My mentionable is something that I was trying to read to November at night, and it's been difficult, but I was just reminded of how much I liked this book by Eva Ibbotson called The Secret of Platform 13. She beat J.K. Rowling to the punch about, having a fantasy book where there's a secret magical entrance to another world in a King's Cross platform. But this the premise is simply that there's a magical island. The prince of this island as a baby is accidentally left behind, in the real world. And the Gump door closes for, 10 years. And then it opens back up, and a young hag and a bunch of other magical characters go on an adventure to try and retrieve him. But it's very, simple, but it is kind of Harry Potter-y in that way. There's even a Knickerbocker glory, that's integral to the story at some point. Because there was a moment in time where a lot of people online were like, oh my god, Secret of Platform 13 ripped off Harry Potter. And then you realize, oh, it came out 3 years before. And Ibbotson is so based that she was like, it's awesome. I'm so glad that J.K. Rowling's being so successful using ideas that maybe arguably could have come from me. I'm not going to be mad about it. She would just let it happen. But this is a fun little book. It's good for people of a certain age and people like me who regress a little bit here and there. What was your pick of the week?
I think it's got to be Guardians. I had a pretty good week as far as the stuff I watched, but I want to say that it's Guardians because this is the first time in a long time that I've been able to say, go see a Marvel movie in the theaters. And I feel like that's a special occasion now. And so I will make Guardians my pick of the week.
I will echo that. It's a rarity, that I feel like anybody of, whoever you are should be able to look at this and be like, yeah, I would want to see this. This is crowd pleasing. It is, meant to make you happy. But yeah, be aware that you might have to, have a difficult conversation about end of life scenarios with your child. But yeah, this was Theater and Stream. Thank you for watching. Have a good week, everybody, and take care.
Yep. See ya.